Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game podcast, stream, game design, game news, Santa Clara, Duke women's basketball, all the best stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I've been watching lots of basketball. The Duke women winning a ACC championship, Santa Clara winning its first game in their tournament in the men's side. We'll see what happens tonight. People who are into basketball will know by the time this airs. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me. And Duke beat their rivals, Carolina. So that was fantastic. Very good weekend. Well, and even better.
I have to say, Sabres winning 8-7 in a game with over 100 penalty minutes because of 7 fights. That's some old school hockey right there, folks. But we're not here for the hockey or the basketball. We know what we're here for. We're here for Teos.
Well, no, but I do want to say before we ask our listener questions, I played Draw Steel yesterday from 11 o'clock to, 6, 7. I don't even know what time it was. It was fantastic. Had a bunch of fun with my friends, and we ran through. We're almost at the end of Delian Tomb, and so that was really cool, which is perfect because what do we have today, Shawn?
On our main segment today, so you better hang in for that, we have none other than MCDM's head honcho, Matt Colville, coming on the show to talk about Draw Steel, to talk about the company, to talk about his journey through this industry. And so we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But we're also looking forward to our listener questions, as we always do. Anything else to mention before we jump in here?
Let's jump.
Let's jump. We're jumping, and we're going to jump in with Jaron Mathis from our Patreon, who asked this question, which I'm going to cut down a little. At what point has a truly new creation been born if it starts from customizing a previous creation? If I take a stat block from an SRD, to what degree do I need to change it before I can call it my own? I don't believe I'll ever publish a book of monster stats on the DM's Guild, but as an academic exercise, I'm nevertheless curious about if I could without violating the intent or letter of the law relative to IP in this space. And then he also asks about doing the same thing with adventures. He has reskinned Curse of Strahd to a great deal, keeping the plot sort of the same, but changing locations, changing the map, changing the tone, and asking, could I publish that on the DM's Guild?
Yeah.
And I'm going to start by saying there are many moral, ethical, and legal layers to this question that bring to mind copyright, trademark, IP law, but everyone's morals and ethics are different. I'm not going to comment on that. And legally, the courts and even IP lawyers are still fighting about all of those questions on a daily basis. And this is the United States, so generally the side with the most money wins. Would you want to go into any further detail on that part of the question?
Well, I'll say a bit on yeah. I mean, I will talk to the ethical part and moral part. Yeah. You can be a dick, and one of the things that I see creators do a lot is when it's wizards they're talking about, they're like, oh, they're not going to sue you. And I think, well, think about the thing that you're trying to copy and profit off of. If it was Evil Hat or Kobold Press, would you feel the same way? Or are you somehow, saying that because Wizards is so big, or maybe you don't like D&D, that you can just take their thing and use it? Imagine it's someone else. Imagine someone was doing it to you. And there will be people out there who will say, I don't care if you use my thing. That's fine. But think of the people who don't feel that way and that are a non-D&D, non-big, whoever it is you don't like entity, and is someone you do like. Would you like people doing that to them? Right? Would you like someone to take, say, a Peltgrain Press Knights Black Agents adventure and just basically use the exact same plot but move a few characters around? Probably the answer is no, right? And so sometimes I think that it is really important to stop and think about that moral angle. The other thing is, are you taking a giant leap forward with your creativity because you're using all this stuff that someone else did with their intellectual property? Then you're not doing the work, right? You're profiting off of somebody else. Is that okay? Because maybe that should have been a partnership and a request to that company because you're leapfrogging ahead, right?
Yeah. To go in a sort of a different direction, we talk to a lot of folks, who creators, who ask about creativity and should I do this work or can I do this work, and they always have these great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And as we found out on our Discord channel, there are very few new ideas. Everything you think is a new idea, if you put it out there, someone's going to say, "Oh, that was done here, that was done there, that was done here, that was done there." So there are very few new ideas, but there is nothing wrong with exploring existing ideas or taking ideas and mixing them, matching them, and getting something new. What's not important is the idea. What's important is the work that's done to make that idea into something new and remarkable and special that people are going to want. Yeah. It's the sweat. It's the previous experience you bring to it. It's the new vision you bring to it. It's about the time and energy that you put into the thing. Even legally, I know in some cases it's you took something that's very close to something else. Show us the work that you did. And that could make a difference. So if you are going to take the time and the energy to change something from its previous form, that will matter legally and in terms of your audience, which is why something like generative AI output should always be seen as plagiarism and theft, because no work was actually done to change the work from what came out of there that was a previous version. Yeah. And even if you do a great deal of changing to the stuff that comes out of that generative AI, you don't know what originally you're stealing from, so you can't make sure that you're making those changes. And as amazing as D&D was, it was a bunch of borrowed ideas that were put together in a new and amazing way that spawned everything that we're talking about. So there's nothing wrong with borrowing ideas and working with existing content, as long as you do that work to make it something that's yours.
Yeah, and that's the difference between inspiration and actual creativity. You can look at, say, Vancian magic coming from Vance, the novels by Jack Vance, right. But that the system exactly as laid out in any of the editions isn't exactly what's in the books, right? It's that idea of having to memorize spells, and that's a different concept. You're not really robbing that IP, right? The Displacer Beast came from a particular, sure, but what it has come to become is so much different, and a ton of work is being done in that. And so it is a really tough question. And one thing I don't want to forget to say with regards to this question, particularly for anybody who's a creator out there, if you were to ever get sued, the cost to defend yourself is one of the biggest barriers out there, right? So because what it can mean lawyer fees. It can mean immediately having to cease selling all of your publications. So if it's something that's print on demand, not too big a deal, right? You just take it off that storefront. But if you have physical copies involved, this is an enormous mess. That's why any freelancer agreement will come with this must be entirely your creation. And they mean that, right? And so especially if you're a contractor for somebody, you can't get into that area where you're robbing someone's IP, even arguably, because you just won't work again, right? At least for that company, but maybe not for others. So it is a significant legal risk the more that you do something. So I would absolutely say to somebody, don't at all take, the plot of Curse of Strahd and run with it, right? That's you would want to run that by a lawyer before you ever got forward to where you're going to publish something, because that does get into that area. Will wizards go after you? Probably not. But again, see the moral and ethical things, like, do you really want to be doing that? And a lot of times what we can do in these kinds of situations is go back to what is it that we love about this, right? And Curse of Strahd isn't exactly about those steps, probably in the adventure and the entire plot. It's probably a couple of really interesting things, like having your fate foretold, or having a mechanism that sort of jumbles where certain things can be found, or having a powerful villain that meets you at the beginning, and at the end is when you can finally confront them. Those things are universal things, right? They're much larger than any one IP, and you can play with that kind of thing in a lot of different ways and do so creatively. And then you get to what you were saying, Shawn, where is it a new idea? Well, who knows? It's new to somebody probably, and it creates a really cool experience, and it's both fun to work with and create, and you will do that work, and it'll be a really neat experience.
Yeah, it's something we saw a lot of on the DMs Guild, especially early on, was like the additional content for Curse of Strahd, the additional content for, and that's a different animal, right? That is, here are some extra encounters, here are some extra things. So how to revise Curse of Strahd to run in the way that you think it should be run is a different animal than publishing it with just these switches.
Yeah. And there are various legal things there, just to be clear, that like, if you're going to do something for a Ravenloft product, well, it's got to live on the DM's Guild, or it's got to be free as fan content. And I've got a number of videos on my channel that go over the difference between fan content and various licenses and all that. So if you're not aware of that, look into those differences.
All right. We'll take one more question real quick here. This one's been in the queue for a while, so we'll take care of it. Laura via Patreon asks, what are some of your favorite projects that you worked on? Whether that's best or most fun or whatever you want to mention. I'd love to hear about it. So this is a hard one for me. First, if you ask me tomorrow, I'd have a different answer. And I have as much fun creating the sort of less noteworthy things than I do a very high profile project. So that's a tough question to ask. I'm going to go through my top 5 real quick, and then Teos, you can do the same.
Sure.
Acquisitions Incorporated will always be on this list for all the reasons that we always talk about, right? Great team, great product, great challenges. Just loved everything about that project. Star Trek Adventures was my first real chance to think about storytelling in a role-playing game outside of fantasy. And so I learned a lot about the ways you need to make a science fiction game different than a fantasy game in terms of the story that you're going to be telling. Defiance and Flan, I loved because it was the first time that I really, really, really play tested and designed and replay tested and redesigned many, many times, because it was something that had a very specific goal with very strict parameters. So in that case, the box that I was put in was fun to play around with. So I love that project. The Moonshine Isles backdrop article that I did for Dragon Magazine for 4th edition. I love Moonshine Isles. It was the first novel set in the D&D world that I read, Dark Walk Around Moonshine. And I just loved researching that. And then thinking about the setting in terms of the new rule set to see what needs to change or what can stay the same based on those rules. And then the Monster Grimoire, the Grimhollow Monster Grimoire, was a great experience because it was my first real book-length project that I had to lead. It included art and layout and Kickstarter stretch goals, and it nearly killed me, but I am stronger for having done it. How about you, Teos?
I love that list. I have to put Ack Inc. and Vault of the Dracolich and Forge of Foes all in the top kind of area for the same reason you were mentioning, which is it was just a great project where you knew exactly what you're trying to do. You're working with the team, whether there was a company above it or not, knowing exactly what you're supposed to do and having complete freedom between the different people on the project to just make that project better. And so in all these cases, you and I and Scott Fitzgerald Gray on Ack Inc., we could do exactly what we wanted. We could talk to Penny Arcade. We could get the feedback and just move forward. And it was just great. Just no barriers, no uncertainties. That's awesome. I really enjoyed Hero Quest, which was board game adventure design, because that was really different. So sort of like talking about Star Trek Adventures, something very different, but really rewarding. And I was asked to do something which was really cool, which was to make orcs have a deeper story in the game. So I loved that ability to say, okay, great. Let's really think, how can we completely change the characterization of these orcs as just, murder fodder to having a really rich, interesting story in a board game, right? Like to make it, but make it salient and come forth. And so I think I tried to do that pretty well, and it was really enjoyable to do it. And it was a great team at Hasbro that I was working with. Then I would say that it's probably the Dwarf and Forge projects were very difficult. There was a lot of back and forth, but that idea of looking at a visual, a terrain set piece and saying, okay, what is the story here, and build on whatever the creator had thought of, or might be the story, but how does it really work? And how do you write that? Was just a fascinating exercise, really sharpened my skills. And then I'd probably end with saying that Crack the Sun right now is a fantastic thing where I'm shifting from, as you have done with various projects, shifting from being the writer to the person overseeing the writing and trying to help people have the better experiences that I've had creating is humbling, awe-inspiring. It's a lot of things, but it's just really neat. You see someone's outline coming, you just go, oh, this is so cool. And then you're like, how can I help that person go from this outline to it being really awesome and have the things they need to do it? That's been a great experience. And I hope it keeps being a fantastic experience because it is a real neat challenge and a very different type of work, which I'm enjoying.
Awesome. Great questions. We've got even more in the queue, but we are going to get to our news and commentary section, starting with a new D&D roadmap coming for 2026. As is what normally happens, this dropped mere hours after we stopped recording the last show, but we can talk about it now. At the Gamma Trade Show that was last week, Wizards dropped this bit of news. We're going to go through it one by one because there's quite a bit here. The first thing they talked about is a new seasonal approach to D&D releases. You want to take us through that sort of thinking, Teos?
It's my pleasure. So this seasonal approach shifts from a book approach or just many, many different books, overlapping to have something that guides what the releases are and bind them together. So we have 3 seasons this year: Season of Horror, Season of Magic, and Season of Champions. It is interesting to me that the releases seem, at least for this year, to sort of straddle the seasons, and you'll see that with the release dates. It's unclear to me whether this is on purpose because it's drumming up excitement and then the thing drops, or is it just what happened this year? That's not exactly clear. So Season of Horror, for example, Shawn, runs from April to June. The book that really ties that season together is Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. This is a $60 source book that's going to drop on June 16th, 2026, and the Season of Horror is April to June, so okay, that's interesting, right? Yep. We get some incredible art showing Strahd after what seems to be a night of debauchery and death. Incredible cover. There's also an alt cover veil that's very cool. Shawn, what's in the book?
Oh, we have new subclasses, new species, new backgrounds, new dark gift feats, as well as content on the domains of dread and their dark lords, dozens of fearsome mist denizens, including potential allies like the iconic Rudolph Van Richten. We've had previous Unearthed Arcana horror-themed subclasses for various classes, so we're assuming that that's going to come forward into this book, that made the grade. And it is said to be a complete package for DMs to build a horror-themed campaign across multiple horror sub-genres.
So that's where, Shawn, I'm listening to all of this and I'm going, well, this sounds to me like Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Yeah. And is this a 2024 reissue of that book? Because originally, what I recall Jeremy Crawford saying back in those days was there are 2 books that we're going to re-release for D&D 2024, and it's going to be Tasha's and Xanathar's, because those are the ones where we're taking parts out of that and putting them in the core books, which didn't really super happen. And now, what we're hearing is more of a reissue, is what sounds to me like Van Richten's. I loved Van Richten's, but it's a book that didn't seem to kind of sell as well and maybe please people the same way it pleased the designer friends I know. I'm not sure. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. We're also getting a new Taroka deck. We're going to get the Horrors Within DM screen and then a map pack, each coming in at $24.99. So, yeah. I mean, too much there to comment on with too little information. But we have been begging for this approach. Right. We've been begging for, let's have some sort of coherent theme and bring the community together.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like we're getting that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I think this is the right product to do it. It's funny because I am not a super horror person. I'm even in a Ravenloft campaign right now, and I've written horror things, but horror is not my genre. And yet, even before this announcement came out, I think based off of the Unearthed Arcana, there were so many people guessing that there would be a Ravenloft reissue or something Ravenlofty. And they would say that with absolute glee. And I just think this is, it's one of those things where I'm clearly not the audience, and that's okay because people are super, super excited. And I think this was an excellent choice from everything that I hear in terms of bringing people back on board.
Yeah. Horror is always a good seller. You look at some of the stuff that's gone on to D&D Beyond from third-party partners. Yeah. The Crooked Moon folk horror project, $4 million. Grim Hollow over the span of several years has done super well, especially compared to other types of fantasy. So I get that sentiment, but it seems to be that there is an audience for it out there.
Yeah. And it is 10 years in this month since the original 5e Curse of Strahd came out. The original Ravenloft was back in 1983, and Van Richten's in 2021, already 5 years old, which I never would have guessed if I hadn't written down.
Well, that's just one season, Teos. We have 2 more seasons to talk about, sort of. The second season is the season of Magic, which will run from July to September of 2026. The Arcana Unleashed source book is a high Magic-focused offering that contains new player options for Magic users and a new Magic item system that will allow items to grow in power alongside character leveling. We're coming in at $49.99 for that as well.
And that's interesting to me. I mean, we can imagine we'll see all these Arcana, Unearthed Arcana subclasses that people were like saying something magical is coming. So sure, yep, here it is. But the idea of Magic items that grow alongside your characters, I'm curious to see what that system is and whether this system, as many times as happened in 5e, is just like somebody made a system that has nothing to do with any previous systems, or does it feed on, evolve from the previous Magic item systems we've had that grow in power alongside character leveling? Like in the Critical Role material, there are various versions of that. Theros has a version of Magic items that increase with your piety. Fizzbands has, items that can level up as you go when you do various things related to dragons. So it'll be interesting to see whether it's just completely different or does it take one of those and move it forward.
People always come up with this. We talk about ideas, right? Like this is the greatest thing ever. And it's been around for so long in so many different iterations over all of the editions of D&D that it's cool. It's a great way to add story to the weapon, so you're not wielding that +1 family heirloom that's been in your family forever, and then you find a +2 weapon, and you're like, nah, who needs this, right? Yeah. It's story-wise, it makes total sense. Mm-hmm. So this should be something that's already in the Magic item rules, and so we'll see what it looks like when it comes out.
I think they're going to take my rules that I published on the drive-through, and they're going to steal those, and then I'm going to sue them, going right back to that first question, and it's going to be great. I'll be bathing in cash. It's going to be perfect.
Yep, you'll be bathing in the pennies that you have left after you hire lawyers to do it.
And lose a lawsuit.
And lose it, of course. And not only are we getting the Arcana Unleashed source book, we are also getting Arcana Unleashed Deadfall, a companion adventure that launches D&D's ultimate Red Wizards adventure, outlining an all-new wizard war, as well as a deep dive into the powerful magical society of Fae. And that one is coming in at $29.99. We're also getting D&D reference card decks in Q4, which include spell decks, magic item decks, and monster decks. 5e references for DMs and players.
I'm curious with this, the price points, right? So this idea of Arcana Unleashed being 50, and then Deadfall, the adventure being 30, but separate. I wonder whether this is one of these cases that's sort of like with the Forgotten Realms 2 books that we saw. These are thinner books where if you were to put them together, they'd actually make what we would have gotten previously. But we're actually paying twice, getting 2 books, and we're paying a little more, So,
well, if you want the adventure, right? That's a solution to don't make the players buy the adventure. We can say, as someone who will buy everything, oh, they're just pulling the adventure out and charging more. And for players, it might be, okay, I only want the book. I don't have to pay for this. Maybe it's paying a little bit more, but is it? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, and so maybe it's better for gamers because that player doesn't have to spend 30, only spends 50. But then it's also a question of whether that's good for the company, right? Because what Tomb of Annihilation would do, or any of those previous classic adventures, is they would sell you on a combination setting, adventure, and player content all in the same. And that was very popular model, right? That led to very high sales. So does this weaken that, or does this mean that every player goes, well, I've got to pay my $50 for Arcana Unleashed? I don't know. Well, it'll be good to see how that plays out.
Yeah. And if you are going to have the rules available digitally on D&D Beyond, and you want those for the character builder, then you just buy the one book instead of the full book with the adventure too. So it's an evolving process, I'm sure, trying to figure out what works best for both the company and the players.
Yeah.
The final season that was announced but not detailed is Season of Champions, that will run from October to December.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Shawn, you know what I'm thinking. They announced this in
I always
March.
know what you're thinking.
It's March Madness, so this is clearly going to be their romantasy basketball setting where you score on and off the court. I've been telling everybody, it's really clear. I'm very excited. If it isn't that for some reason, I mean, you got to play the odds here. If it for some reason is not that, what could it be? Maybe it's Dark Sun, right? Dark Sun has arenas. Arenas have champions. Maybe that's what they mean. Wouldn't be maybe the name I would have chosen, but I think a lot of people are guessing Dark Sun just because that Unearthed Arcana looms large in everyone's mind, that maybe we're getting a taste of Dark Sun. And with this comes all my trepidation. This is where I'm not an anxious person, but I develop anxiety when I think about Dark Sun. Will it be the Dark Sun that I know and love? Will it be something different that I still love? Or will it be something else? And I'm always, this is where I get the sweats.
Mm-hmm. We will find out when it is announced.
Yep.
We also have other things on the roadmap. There was D&D Beyond talking about DM prep tools that will come out in the spring, an event finder that will come out in the summer, and player onboarding and character builder 2.0 that will come out hopefully in the fall. What else do they talk about on the roadmap?
A number of key events. So Universal Fan Fest is back, mentioned for spring, as is GaryCon, Gen Con, and London Fan Expo we talked about last episode during the summer. Gamehole isn't on the list, but in the communications that Gamehole sent out via email, D&D was now there as a sponsor, so it looks like they have a bigger role there this year. So they may not have either chosen to mention that, or it just didn't make it onto the list this time because it's later in the year. We also got partnered content, which we talked about last time. We now have both the Q1 and Q2 releases mentioned again on the roadmap. So keeping that strong as part of this whole communication of what the roadmap is like. And this was all, put together on a graphic that feels like, I don't know, any of these, large company releases, right? That's showing the awesome things that are coming, whether it's a Disney Marvel type of approach or whatever it might be.
We also get organized play mentioned. They do talk about various things that are coming for organized play, and we're not going to dwell on that because on the show next week, we're going to have a very special guest here to talk specifically about organized play going forward with the new edition of the game.
Ooh.
And it was cool to see the D&D staff on different shows. We had 2 on our show, the same 2 on the Lorecast, and Nerd Immersion hosted a, quote, D&D State of the Game that had Greg Bilsland, Kara Kenna, Justice Arman, and Keith Herman discussing the way the D&D franchise works and some of these upcoming releases.
Yeah, really, really great to see. I think fans reacted overall very positively to this, of seeing D&D staff out there on these channels. Also, that these are channels that are positively engaging with D&D, I think was helpful, right? And I think the only thing I heard that was a sort of negative was, wow, that happened all in like 1 week. In fact, Lorecast also had the D&D Beyond guy, or Nerd Immersion also had the D&D Beyond guys on there. And so it was just like and I probably was just the way the scheduling happened, but it was all very like, wow, a giant blip of this. And they were saying, we want more and we want to see it continue, not, suddenly end. So is that the situation? Are we going to see more of this, or is it like this all happened because of this roadmap release? See you in a quarter. We'll find out how it works.
All right. So let's jump into the sort of weird news that almost overshadowed this great roadmap release. And it was that D&D 2024 is now 5.5e.
Maybe
the D&D Beyond, maybe the D&D Beyond support FAQ is signaling a change to call 2024 rules 5.5e, and for the term 5e to mean only the 2014 version of the rules. The FAQ said this was only on D&D Beyond, and conversations with staff seemed to indicate that this was the case. So what's all the hubbub about, Teos?
Well, everybody began immediately reacting to this because there's one part where, a couple of questions, I think, on the FAQ that say this is a D&D Beyond change, books aren't changing. But the way it came across to everybody was, and Ian World had a immediate headline, D&D 2024 is now all caps officially called 5.5e. And fans ran with this. Other sites ran with that concept. There was a hilarious reaction from Greg Tito, who used to be in the marketing communications there. And then the new D&D website comes out, and it says 5.5 somewhere on there. And then today somebody mentioned the SRD page has been updated to not say 2024. It says 5.5. And so it's one of these cases where it's unclear what the company is doing. The FAQ says that this is a D&D Beyond tag, right? And the thought process, I think, goes back to what Brian Perry was saying on our show last week, where the character builder currently can't easily handle all 2014 cases, especially on third-party content. And so there is this question of, when you've got your character builder on 2024 and someone buys a book that is for 2014, they probably expect it to fully work. So this is your solution, right? When you tag something either 5.5 or 5, now people will, I guess, maybe, this is the concept, have the expectation of what they bought and whether it fully will be integrated or not. To which I say, no, this is me, my software project manager side, having managed many of these kinds of things. This is great thinking, but no, you actually need to tell your customer what doesn't map across. You have not solved the problem. You actually need to tell them what to expect this product provides or doesn't provide, right? This is in the character builder or this is not in the character builder. You have not solved the issue. Also, what you have now done is created a tag that creates negativity around the term 5e, because that's now bad, non-implemented, or maybe dubiously implemented. And the weird thing is you could have a partner where everything in their 5e product is fully implemented in 2024 or in the character builder, but is actually 2014 based. And you would tag it in a way that would dissuade people from buying it, right? So I think this is a giant marketing communications misstep. You also took great pains through the history of all of this 1D&D and all of the process of drumming up to the release of 2024 to painstakingly explain what this edition was. And they misstepped at various points there. But in the end, they tried to say very loudly and clearly, it's not like 3E to 3.5. And yet the FAQ that was just updated actually has a part where it says it's just like 3E to 3.5, apparently completely unaware of how incompatible those two versions are together and how different the 2024 version is. So there's just a lot here that's very weird messaging. It's unclear what the company really wants to do. Maybe we'll get a clarity. It may be that the company looks at this and goes, I guess we just got to call it 5.5 because we did this. Yeah. And it's maybe a sign of the D&D Beyond team, because they are also doing the tech things, have a lot of influence here and a lot of possibility to do missteps and maybe indicative that the groups need to talk a little more together to make sure these kinds of things are well thought out.
I mean, Teos, you know this as well as I do, having worked in software. There's the people that want things to be the way that they want them to be. And then there's the reality of what the software can do and how it changes and how it is received by the customers. And in a lot of ways, a game is very much like software.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can wish it to be something, you can promise things, but in the end, it is what it is. And that's the reality that you have to work with. And so many times in my software background, the sales team, the marketing team would say, all right, we're making this change and we know some people aren't going to like it. So we're going to say it's not a change. And you can say that all you want, and you might even be able to get away with it at some point. But the users are going to start referring to it as what it is. So if you have software version 3.7 and then you change to 4, you may try to call it 3.8, but them users out there in the real world, they're going to say, no, this is new because I need to do these other things to use it. And in the end, what I found is you're often better off just biting the bullet, getting in there and saying, yes, this is different.
Yeah.
And you can never, ever control the messaging, because the messaging is going to be on the part of the people that use it. Yes. But you can at least guide the messaging in a way that you have a chance of getting out in front of the problem. Yeah. But you have to be honest, and you have to understand the perspective of the people that are actually on the side of using the thing you're creating, as opposed to wishing that it would just be accepted as the thing you want it to be.
Yeah. And understanding how it's going to use, because again, I don't think this solves your problem in D&D Beyond itself, which is probably the whole reason this got approved. You still need to tell a customer whether their thing is supported or not. This tag doesn't tell you that. And throwing that around, promulgating this throughout the system will not solve your tech issues. You know, your tech issues are we talked about last time, the rebuild, and you've got to get things so that they are so that they actually are functional in the character builder. It's not about tags, and what you've done is created a confusing message. You also are in situations where, like, the SRD, for example, is version 2.5 or version 5.2.1 is the current version. Yeah, so that creates, wait, is it 5.2? Is it 5.5? No, it's 5.2.1 for the version 5.5. Like, you know, it's just, it gets really complicated. And, you know, 5e was originally visioned as the final version of D&D. 2024, one of the reasons 1D&D was floated as a code word initially was to represent this idea that it would be the perpetual edition of D&D. They backed away from that a bit and decided to say it was more of an umbrella 1D&D, all under one roof. But that idea has still sort of been out there. Well, now if you're going to go put in 5.5, you're halfway through 5. Are you going to have 5.6, 5.75, 5.8.9999? You know, like, it just, you're cornering yourself in there in a way that I don't think they wanted to do. I'm not saying 2024 is a great idea, but there are a lot of reasons why the original team did not go with 5.5. Now you've got a new team, a lot of changed people. And so, well, this is, I guess, how we learn.
Yeah, it is how we definitely learn. And we've also learned that D&D has a new website, which announced the Ravenloft book, and has a Discover section linking to several new sections, such as going on your first adventure and the feeling of play, which is a super short choose your own adventure experience. We have building your first character, your inner hero, with similar choices, but you decide what to do when responding to danger. Then you choose a weapon, and then it tells you your class. Or you continue your journey on D&D Beyond, takes you to the current character build. I'm going to run through this really quick because we're short on time. So we have a community section showing recent actual plays and videos, shows the Kansas City Chiefs playing D&D and other videos from other channels, in addition to the Wizards Commission channels. We have links to the Fan Expo London, to the Universal Fan Fest nights, to the D&D Discord, and to start playing. We don't know why the virtual weekends aren't there, because that's a good place to also get into a game, but maybe that will be added later. We have a section with recent D&D Beyond posts. We have clearly or inspiring creativity for over 50 years, a timeline of some D&D books across the years, from OD&D to AD&D to the Forgotten Realms box set, the player's handbook for each edition from 2E to 5E, which is labeled 5.5E. We have Explore Digital Games, look at the Warlock trailer, Baldur's Gate 3, 2 other partner games. We have Venture into the Cinematic Quest, which is the D&D movie, with a link to just the trailer.
Mhm.
But all of that stuff is up on dungeonsanddragons.com.
Yeah, pretty good. One last thing, I'll just my tiniest of rants to say that 5.5e with a small e is not what you should do for the fonts that D&D uses or online content. It should be a big E. Thanks. I'm moving on. D&D also shared, Shawn, the Q2 partner release schedule. So it's Dr. Drollin's Dictionary of Dinosaurs by Paleo Games for 5.5e for April. Tom Cardos' sticker packs for April. Northland's World Book, Northland's Sagas, 2 Kobold Press books that are coming out in May. So we've got everything from sticker packs for maps, adventures, source books, a lot that's here, 8 new subclasses that come in the Kobold Press stuff. So that's a fairly packed, even if it sounds like it's just 3 things, that's a lot for Q2 partner releases.
That is. And let's jump one inch into our creator corner here to talk about Game Master Tools, Creating Villains and Lairs by Jeff Stevens Games on Kickstarter. This is a new supplement for game masters focusing on villains and their lairs. We get short essays with tips on running great villains, suggestions on how villains can grow in power, tables for your villain and their lair, and inspiration to create great villains and develop their motivations. This Kickstarter has already funded, and it ends on Wednesday, March 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We get great essays from the likes of Jeff Stevens and Dale Critchley and Alex Cameron, John Hook and Ed Greenwood and Shanna Germain and Greg Marks and Gregson and one Teos Aloysius Abadia.
That is my secret true name. Yeah, I wrote your villain's second motive. It's always great to work with Jeff. He's a fantastic creator. Like if you want to back somebody who explains what the project is, helps people, pays them well, it's Jeff Stevens. Mine is on the idea that you don't just have one motive for your villain, but that second one. And that second thing that they're doing really adds character to the story, to the interactions with the villain and the villain's people. And so I explain all about how to use that to your advantage.
Cool. And that there was our news and commentary section here on Mastering Dungeons. Stay tuned for our great interview coming here with Matt Colville of MCDM and Draw Steel fame.